Hail, hail, the Celts are here, and what the hell do we care now? We've just finished an absolute groundhog day of a match, it feels like, in a lot of ways, against Rangers at their place in the final game before the international break of the 25-26 season. And we are right at the very sharp end of the transfer window. There's been such a huge cloud of noise and colour, I suppose, in lots of different ways around all things Celtic in the lead up to this match, and in particular, over the last 2 weeks, the amount of different headlines and topics that we've all been grappling with has been absolutely astounding. But when it comes to, the misery of the Champions League and for the game that we've seen this weekend, it always boils back down to the players on the pitch, to the game of football at hand. And this is a game that when it was coming down to the players on the pitch, we were all actually feeling pretty good about ourselves. It feels like more Celtic fans maybe than in recent years have maybe caught a bit of a glimpse of the disaster of the defending the Rangers have been putting up so far this year. But with the players now being out on the pitch and back up the tunnel again and everything's been said and done, we've seen it all in its fullness of time. It is the lowest XG reported game ever. There has been absolutely no chances. Both teams started a player that they just signed like within the last 24 hours. And both managers coming into this game and coming out of it really have changed their tune with how they're facing the media and some of the information they're putting out towards us, certainly. In the video today, we'll break down the 0-0 draw that we had at Ibrox and really where it all went wrong, what the problem was there for us in the match, as well as the aftermath of it, what we pick up with, what we expect to maybe conclude throughout the rest of the transfer window as we now head into the international break. At any point in the video, if you do laugh, you learn, you like something or whatever, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Get into the comment section, and as always, feelings and takeaways from the game and the weekend and the transfer business, the manager, the captain, everything else in between, of course, drop it down there. And at point of recording, we are just about to break through the 14,000 subscriber mark, so thanks to everyone for their support here on the channel. But as you guys know, our goal is to get to 18,888, and we cannot do that without your support. So if you do enjoy the content, hit the subscribe button for more, of course. And yeah, let's just get stuck straight into this one. Because although there was no goals in this game, there's a little bit of meat on the bone to get stuck into, a few talking points, a few interesting developments, and a few recurring problems. If we just remove the Rangers team for a start and we just have a look at the team that actually started for Celtic, this was pretty much the best case scenario coming into the game. Just with the way that the form of the team had been going, we get the emergency signing of Balikwisha now. When we were live on Thursday night previewing the game, the announcement happened literally like a minute or two after me and McBride stopped streaming, so the powers that be at Celtic were tuning into the show, getting the putting their ear to the ground, taking the temperature of the room, and as soon as we were done, the Balikwisha deal went out. So that was great to see, and it was great to see him just get dropped into it, and it was a real throwback in that regard, seeing Celtic and obviously Miofsky for Rangers, getting a signing done and debuting them in the Derby. Throughout my life, this has happened more than once, and quite often has been the case that these guys can write their name all over these fixtures, so that added a bit of excitement into the game for me, and I think for everyone it added a little bit of a new unknown element. We're also getting Dyson Maeda back through the middle, which is where a lot of people have been crying out for him to go to. And Negren profiled as a winger in a lot of people's eyes when he signed at the club. In Brendan's eyes, he's firmly a centre mid, but he has been playing in the wing, and he has looked alright when he's played out there for us. So him playing out there alongside the remainder of the front three that we see here, with bringing Engels into the beginning with what is basically the midfield from last season, which worked pretty well for the most part. It felt like the strongest 11 that we've actually put out this season, and obviously Anthony Ralston being the only kind of circumstantial player that makes the lineup here. But everyone else is definitely in here on like ability and everything else that you would want to think about. And just with the way the Kairat game went down, we broke down on the channel how we kind of evolved that game with the substitutions, and we did see a bit of a different take. We did see a bit of a different shape in that match when it came to throwing the kitchen sink at it, trying to play through the lines and get shots away. And would we see some of that maybe from the start, was my thinking. Because when you look at all the profiling we've did of Balikwisha this season, he profiled very similar to Ben Negren in the sense of like very good technical player, very versatile, can do a number of different roles in the team. But in terms of when we're picking him up, he's actually been playing more centre mid than he has been playing out in the wing. And I think that's something that we've seen in this match. We'll talk about Balikwisha, of course, as we get into it. But with his ability and his maybe natural tendency, just with where he's at now, with where he's been playing and, kind of comfort zones and whatever, along with Negren's been playing centrally. And we've heard from the manager that Negren doesn't give you width out that side because he is coming inside, So there was some options here for some different interesting things to kind of pan out. If you're watching this video, you've probably seen the game. You probably know this didn't actually happen, which is a shame. This is the Rangers team that went out. There was a little was a few differences to this. I don't think we expected Tavernier to start, and when I seen he was starting, that made me a little bit more excited, because this guy has just got PTSD all about this fixture for the most part. Diamande and Barron were not expected either, as was Mikey Moore and also Miovski. When we did the preview, we didn't know he was going to be playing. So some different names and faces come into it from the Rangers team, and there was a little bit of a change of shape here for Russell Martin, and a little bit of a change on philosophy. I think, what we'll just kind of start, I think we were expecting Rangers to be trying to play out from the back, and us being able to get some change out of them, us being able to try and force some errors really high up the pitch, and just absolutely pull their pants down like we've done a million times before. And there was definitely a whiff of that being possible, but it just never happened at all, did it? In the early goings of the game, Balikwisha, Maeda and Negren did all seem kind of be positioned to kind of go and have a bit of a press, but in the first couple of times that it tried, we kind of got close to them or whatever, but it never really gave as much pressure. And when they got the ball into midfield, we were getting that kind of situation that we seen last year against Rangers, as well as in other periods when we've had to go away and they've been okay. They've actually had some good performances once in a while. We do forget them though. Guys like Diamande doing very well at picking the ball into midfield and progressing it through the middle. It was just something that we had to deal with constantly. You definitely felt that picking Mikey Moore was to go one-on-one with Ralston, and fair enough for them. They're trying to pick on the second string player that's playing, it's not Alistair Johnson or whatever, and they pick the wonder kid that they've picked up on loan there, Paddy Roberts apparent kind of situation. And I think Ralston did a-okay for it, but Miovski was really the live wire up front. We had Gassama kind of going shoulder to shoulder with Tierney, and we never really got Tierney coming down the left-hand side very often. I think there was one or two occasions where, because of throw-ins and just we were gaining yards up the pitch, he did come shoulder to shoulder with Tavernier and, whatever. But Tierney was much more a defensive operator in here, dealing with Gassama in a 1v1 situation, which is fine. But Miovski is played against us, so even though he didn't have much link-up or much kind of synergy or knowing all the moves and whatever with his teammates, he knew where to try and run off his scales. He knew how to kind of, he's got the measure of these guys. He knows how fast they are. He knows how strong they are. He knows when they jump, all that kind of stuff. So he came in with a player that had experience in the game without having experience in the game, which was a weird dynamic, especially in the first kind of half an hour or so. But because, in midfield, they were quite dangerous. They weren't that clumsy at the back early on. And in midfield, Barron got man of the match. I don't think there's really much of an argument against that, really. It just absolutely set us up to do the normal thing that everyone knows that Celtic do when we get possession of the ball, and when these players are on the ball, especially trying to get out of our defensive third, trying to work up the pitch. And we've seen the pros and the cons of this, right? And the cons of this 100% is when our midfield is disconnected. Our midfield is all over the place, and this is the way we were set up in this one, where Hatate was to be all over the left hand side of the pitch in recovery, as well as supporting the attack, which he did all of this throughout the game. And Engels is much more in the same kind of thing, but just because of the way he plays, it's much more of this kind of V shape that we kind of see him in terms of where he appears and how the kind of play he gets involved in, that sort of thing, which on paper, on a little tactics board, Ruben Amorim is the kind of the meme of that from the weekend, I suppose, isn't he? It makes sense because you can play in different zones, and we do have the little zones thing. Doesn't this just really put Celtic doesn't it just really sum us up in a really coincidentally accurate way? And then the phrase becomes marking McGregor out the game, which they kind of do, but it's kind of like playing with a broken robot, in the sense of if they know we just put Asgard on McGregor, McGregor's not going to ever get on the half turn, and he's going to take one or two touches, and if you give it to me, I might give it straight back one touch, or I might go one or two touch, play it out here, or there's never a time, and this game was just all about it, where McGregor gets on the ball, drops his shoulder, has a good first touch, a good enough first touch to take his man out of the equation, like we know he's got the ability to do, the most frustrating part of it, and go through the midfield, go through the heart of the team here, get someone to commit out of position, buy some space for your pal, slide the ball into him, and he can carry on from there. There's none of that. So they say mark McGregor out of the game, but it's kind of just getting him to trigger. They can just trigger McGregor into doing these nonsense passes that go nowhere, that allow them to pick up the positions that they want to pick up in relation to the ball and the game state and all that kind of stuff. So we wasted an obscene amount of time going nowhere, and a large part of it was, as I say, the way that we've kind of shaped up. Now, Balikwisha's got a lot of eyes on him in this game, and I think, like all Celtic fans, I couldn't take my eyes off him throughout the game. You're wanting to see the new signing get on the ball and do something, and the times he was on, I think the criticism that comes his way is very valid. You know, he doesn't really take on Tavernier on the 2 occasions he's got, but he does buy himself a bit of space. He does play early crosses, he does play good crosses, and he does get them into the right area. Just sadly, he's not really connected with the man, and he's played the wrong ball at the right the wrong ball at the wrong time, or the right ball at the wrong time, depending on how you want to look at it. But you're looking for him to take his man on a few occasions. There was a moment in the first half where he'd got on the ball from deep or something like that. No. I think Hatate had got on the ball, had got by somebody, had got into this type of zone here, and played the ball back to McGregor in and around here. And at which time, Balikwisha is just like walked into this zone here, and McGregor's seen him in his periphery, but he's been looking towards Tierney, and he plays the ball to Tierney, and he tells Balikwisha, no, you need to get back out on the line. And this is exactly what we should have been doing a lot more of. We should have had Balikwisha coming in centrally. We should have had Negren tucking in nice and narrow as well, and really just outnumbering them with good football players in this part of the part of the pitch. This is the most dangerous part of the pitch possible, and this was even more important for us to do, because in this game, unlike many other games this season, Maeda was very quick to drop in the pocket. There was periods in this game where if McGregor did manage to play like a pass with Ralston or something like that, and then it would come into a zone where someone's facing forward and crossing the halfway line, you would see Daizen Maeda pop into this zone here inside of the midfielders and try and get on the ball, and then maybe bounce it to someone else and try and make something happen. One of the advantages that's supposed to give you is that you can bring other players into play. Now, if you're bringing someone into this space here, you might not get Jigga to commit all the way. He's maybe going to hold his space or whatever, but it gives space for other people to travel into. And if Balikwisha's got the freedom to come inside, every time Maeda's dropping deep, we've got someone else we could be playing with. Maeda might not know he's there, but if Maeda plays the ball to Engels, by the way, we'll talk about in a minute in a bit more detail, but Engels could find a ball into Balikwisha, you would imagine, in these types of positions, and then we ask questions of them. We put them on the back foot, we have them recovering, facing their own goal. We've then got other players coming into the equation, and chances can then happen, a route to goal, as it were. But what happened every time Daizen Maeda, because we're telling Balikwisha, you've got to stay on the left, Tierney isn't going to go beyond you, so you're just going to be up there by yourself. Tierney's going to be man for man with him, you're going to be man for man with him. Every time Maeda drops into these pockets here, it doesn't do anything. It actually goes nowhere, and all it does is slow down the switch of play that we like to do. Now again, in one of the breakdown videos we did recently, we spoke about when you're going to do these switches of play, you really need to overcommit to it to bring the opposition into the same sort of space. And there was a moment again in the first half where we had Engels and Hatate right over on this side of the pitch together. A lot of Rangers players have been sucked over to this area of the pitch, which got me excited, because I'm thinking, okay, I can see Engels is over here, I can see Hatate is over here. They're either going to link up themselves and buy someone some space to make something happen from, or if they can get that switch out quickly the way they want to, if Rangers overcommit in an area and they've got a 4v3 like Brendan spoke about in the post-match, he thought we did well in, and I suppose there's a small argument for that. But if we can get out of the 4v3 or the 3v4 or whatever you want to think of it as, get to McGregor and the switch is on, and we can make the switch happen really quickly, then we can hurt them in that way, and then we can find the striker coming in behind people, and we can maybe even get a shot straight away at goal if it's good enough, depends on the player. The Negren was quite happy to shoot from distance today. Wasn't terribly close, but on one of the occasions I thought, you know what, that wasn't actually that bad. Like the way the game went, it kind of needed something like that. But no, we didn't do that at all. By the time it came out to do the switch of play, we must have made sure even Schmeichel got on the ball before we switched it around, and by that time the whole team just kind of shifts over, don't they? And any space that was there is quickly kind of crowded out. So it didn't ever feel like we had an established route to goal in this team, in this match at all, and we made it on it was serious content in the sense of, like, I did actually apply for the job. If they interviewed me, I'd have been totally serious about it, and everything else that goes along with that, of course. It would be a dream, you would say, right? I don't think that's too much to say or whatever. And if you're looking at that Rangers team coming into it and thinking about how are we going to create opportunities in it, I don't know why it's stretching Balikwisha and Negren, because this Magoma guy needs defending, right? There's no getting away from that. Moore is going on to Ralston, that needs defending. There's no getting away from that. But you have to allow these guys to come inside and ask really difficult questions of the defence, because the defence struggle under pressure, and the pressure that these kind of guys can create from boxing in. Engels plays wide quite a lot off the ball. There's no reason to say, like, he can't be covering stuff in here, or even just reshape it so that, that's your job. Engels off the ball. If Ben comes in, you're going out here, and you can work it from there, to the point where when we do get on the ball, once we cross the halfway line, we know these are the ways we're going to try and ask big questions of them, get them to overcommit, and then try and make something happen from it. Everything's too much. Let's go out to this side of the pitch, try and play the triangles. If it doesn't work, get it to McGregor, and then we'll make about 7 passes before we find Tierney to Hatate, and then he loses the ball. Let's all recover back, win it back. Let's do the same thing again. We lose the ball. Let's recover back. Let's do it again. Rinse and repeat. There was no... Brendan said it in the post-match, but really this stuff should be coming from the training pitch, The midfield looked great, and Negren, I think in this game you can see why Rodgers doesn't want Negren as a winger, because we didn't have any real threat of pace. Balikwisha didn't feel to be really lightning in this game, where he was going to take that line like you'd see Jota do, or even Nicholas Kuhn or something like that, where he would really blast away past somebody. Now he does have that kind of lift of pace in him, so I don't know why he was kind of playing within himself. Maybe, he did only parachute in on Thursday night, so he's probably not totally on first name basis with everyone yet. But he didn't, you'd think there would be a moment in the game where he thinks, right, I'm going to really open up the legs here and really take this joker for a run and try and make something happen. And Dyson, I'm seeing a lot of stuff in the post-match. Again, you never really seen him open up, although on a lot of occasions whenever we did pile out on the left, we did actually have Dyson coming out here with Balikwisha, and whenever he did Dyson, he just had Tavernier's number. And it did make me think, and I can see why that move happened later in the match, of course. Tavernier on Maeda on Tavernier is just old school, isn't it? So maybe something we could have been aware of exploiting a little bit more with Dyson through the middle. It feels like this is all very lastminute.com because of the Adamida thing as well as the Balikwisha thing. But if we are bouncing Maeda out here because Tierney's not going to bomb on, then we really need to have something figured out where, there is a definitive route to go here. There's a move we can make, where the guys are all on page with, and it's like, okay, we're going to sucker them in, and as soon as this guy commits into the space, we're then going to exit back the way. But then when that pass comes back, it has to be big, and it has to be blah blah blah, whatever, and you've got to find the man in here. We've got to make sure we beat the block, wherever that might be. You find the man, and then we're turning and we're running from there. Whatever. The number 1 rule is don't lose possession. The number 2 rule is move the ball quickly. And that is really what everyone is just hell-bent on doing for the most part. Hatate, I think, all the way through the first game, did nothing. I think there was one occasion very early on when he got on the ball, he kind of rolled into some space and he went nowhere. And for the rest of the first half, he didn't really do much. Engels is coming in for, I think, more flack than I've seen in the post-match here. And I think Engels has moved on from the last. I think he's played positively so far this year. And I don't really understand what people are looking for from him, because in this game, I think he played, I don't want to say he played well, so I don't think he's quite played well in this game, but Hatate should have been subbed off for Engels for me in this game. When Engels was subbed off, I would have 100% took Hatate off at that time and left Engels on, because Engels was all over the pitch. I mentioned the moment where he's kind of overloading with Hatate, and that didn't happen. He didn't cross the centre line and go over to the left hand side too often, but it did happen maybe 2 or 3 times in the earlier stages of the game. And in terms of getting the ball out of the back from us, helping McGregor trying to break lines, where McGregor in this kind of press from Rangers just box him in, and really it's like he's a horse with blinkers, and McGregor is the guy that's always on the swivel, always on the half turn, directing traffic, landing aeroplanes onto the pitch, and he can't ever know, I'm going to sucker you right in and buy that space in and behind you, and I'm going to take it, and it just never happens. So they play that game with us. Engels is one of the ones, along with Hatate, that's coming into these pockets and trying to play and get us out. Negren is also a player that's coming into these pockets, and then we're losing that type of width. And because, again, it's about keeping possession and you can't play it into space, what do? We retreat from this side of the pitch, and then we'll go out to the left, where, again, it's just not built to get us out and get us across very well, because we're leaving Hatate isolated on one side of the pitch, Engels isolated on one side of the pitch. And even in the, against the front three here, if we are going to try and break into space and do that kind of thing, it's not really going to be against Rangers that often, is it? You're going to be on the ball a lot more. They're going to let you have the ball, and they're going to ask you questions, and you need to really commit and take somebody out of the equation. And I think Engels went around the pitch, had Diamandi stuck to him like a bad smell for a lot of the match, and did create opportunities where you would find Hatate would get on the ball, where maybe Negren would pop in, maybe the occasions where we're talking about where Daisen Maeda drops into the pocket. And I thought he played some of the best passes in this game. The chipped ball that he played for Balikwisha from this type of arrow here was brilliant. He had another 2 or 3. I think he had 3 occasions in total where he's tried to play in Balikwisha from deep, and I thought it looked really good. And you can tell there's maybe going to be a bit of link up coming from that. But the front 3 did not link up. The midfield 3 did not link up. But the defence linked up. The defence linked up with every other player in the pitch. And when your defence are the ones that are making the connections from deep, in the middle of the pitch and then into the final third, you're just giving the opposition every opportunity to get back into shape, to make it deep and narrow, to make it really tough to play through, and with no pace, because Negren isn't blasting past anyone at short notice. Maeda doesn't really have the space, or the ball isn't really coming through that angle as well. And we've drawn this line on the board before when we had the old software, right? But it's nice on the new software to probably draw it again. But this is the funnel. This is where we should be looking at our main attacking play coming from. It's nice having the ball out wide and getting to the byline for cutbacks, or getting like Negren out here with Ralston and Engels and trying to get 4 of them out into this zone to be active and to be, committed to the cause, which is then going to have a knock-on effect to other players across the team, is smart. And yeah, we can do stuff with it, but because we never ever actually control the ball, actually make something happen through this middle funnel where strikers can pick their side, where defenders are in really 2 questions of where's this guy going to go next? Is he going to come short? Is he going to go behind me? Everything's very easy to defend. Everything's very easy to telegraph, and it just does. There's no invention. There's no direct, grab the game by the scruff of the neck. In this one, where someone through the middle of the pitch is going to make something happen, it's always going out wide to 1v1s or 3v4s in this kind of situation, as you can see here, which is, it's maybe a bit condensed on this board, but it's very common, like the kind of case, even if you put Asgard in here, if you don't think Suitor's coming over. And it's how can we do well in this space here, and then you need to be on your heels for a tap in, you need to be crashing in at the back post, control the edge of the box with you. There's never any, right, if we get the ball out from defence, McGregor, like we've mentioned, turn and run, but even do the bounce pass to Scales, and Scales can take some yards and maybe play it into someone else, but it feels like after that, it's what now? And yeah, there's just no direct authorization to just go for it, because Balikwisha coming in deep and then being told to go back out is just so one-dimensional and so backward. Negative football, and this is the sort of stuff that managers in England and Scotland are labelled as, you've got a really negative manager. Your manager plays really negative football. That's the way we play with this type of setup, this type of instruction, this lack of real freedom. And Rodgers talks about freedom and the team that is meant to have freedom, and it's really built on good attacking players taking control of the final third. But they're all far too isolated. You need to rule break at some point. You need to just stack the odds in your favour, especially when it is very tight and Barron's playing man of the match. Diamandi's playing one of his good games for once. Miovski's coming in with a real point to prove as well, and against a familiar opponent, as it were. You need to take a moment where you really stack the odds in your favour. You just cheat code it. It could be a breakaway from a set piece. They were some of our better moments as well, but again, that's just a wee bit too circumstantial. It's not controlling the game. It's not, we're Celtic, we're going to put our foot on the ball and we're going to make something happen. And I think that's pretty much the most part of everything I want to say about the game. I thought Hatate, we'll kind of walk it through, obviously, because we have the substitutions. Engels and Balikwisha come off for Shin and Forrest, and this did give us a bit of a lift in the game or whatever. I did think it was a bit premature for Balikwisha, but I totally get it, because he has just parachuted in, and he was all by himself out there. He didn't have a fullback helping him. Maeda came out there once or twice to help up, but it just didn't really link up, and then they kind of got in each other's way. It just wasn't really sitting well for him. He could have done a little bit better with the chances he had, so fine, I can kind of get that. But Engels was doing far more in the match for us at this point in the game than Hatate did. Now, Hatate went on and kind of got a little bit better in the match, didn't he? But Engels coming off, Negren going back into midfield, and Forrest coming on. I can get behind that, because as we mentioned, Negren out there was nowhere near as effective as he could have been, and we needed someone to be coming through the middle of the pitch a lot more, which he's been doing from midfield. Grab the game by the scruff of the neck, get by somebody, play someone right down the channel. So, and this is a good move. I don't mind this, right? Balikwisha coming off, Maeda going out left, and then bringing on Shin. Okay, fine, I can get behind that a little bit as well, but I really don't think Hatate should have stayed on at this part of the game, and he did get better. The energy Shin gave us was a really nice wake-up call, and I think that's it's the thing that's bought him time in the squad for me, is that, or what Rodgers is at least kind of getting out of him, is that he is ferocious. He's quite strong, he's not shy, he leaves it all out there, and he just covers the ground really quickly, and it felt like he made Dyson a little bit quicker and energised. Dyson felt like he had someone to kind of do that kind of job with. Hatate kind of did come to life a little bit in that time as well. But with Negren dropping into deep here and Forrest coming on, Rangers had to readjust how they were going to be marking with this. In the first half, I should have mentioned, because it was just a little note, but Mikey Moore was dropping in really deep to try and just crowd the middle as well. And we did see Ralston come into inverted fullback, and at that time was when we seen Engels being a bit more of a wide player, like I referenced before. I forgot to kind of tie that into when we seen it in the game, but that was because of Ralston coming in. And Ralston was really solid, like didn't really put a foot wrong. There's one or two kind of heart and mouth moments, wasn't there? But nothing really that's memorable or you're going to write home about in that regard. But anyway, with Negren coming in central here, Forrest coming out wide, Rangers were still trying to get a bit of sorting with this. And Forrest coming off the bench in these situations, in these games, this is where you want him, right? This is where he can come in and really give us what we've been getting out of him for 60 or 70 minutes in half an hour. And it's like, on you go, Jamesy, get the read of the game, take him in the channel, or play this guy off a 1-2. And Forrest plays a lovely ball in for Shin that Shin just isn't quite, it's just a bit too much on the ball, isn't there? Shin doesn't quite get to it. But Forrest comes on, gives us a bit of invention, gives us a bit of that know-how in this fixture as well. Don't really think anything comes in Negren in midfield, but you do get a bit more out of Hatate, don't you? Carter Vickers in this game twice went into the nosebleeds, did very well, but again, if you see I think it's the first time Negren is, like, honestly, a really simple pass with the left foot. I could have made it. He just doesn't see it. He's got his eyes on the ball. He just doesn't want to lose possession because he's came way out of his comfort zone, and he's abandoned post in a big way. So, like, he's in the nosebleeds, isn't he? But Big Vickers played very well in that regard today. He didn't settle for being the guy that slows it down. You can tell he's probably heard a bit of this on social media, because like we mentioned, for the first time ever, he has kind of lost that invincible or that invulnerable from criticism kind of aura. And Vickers twice in this game took a bit of charge and ate up the ground in front of him, so kudos to him for that. But I think Engels' range of passing would have really benefited having Forrest back on the pitch, having Yamada really nipping in behind some players, and if you had Negren in the middle to play alongside Engels, especially having Engels on the left side of midfield, which, again, we don't need to talk about too much. I thought that would have been a better move anyway. That's a point for another day. The next substitution we get thereafter is a debut for Celtic. We get 63 Kieran Tierney coming off for number 36 Sriracha, which I thought was just funny if that's deliberate when I seen it on the substitution board, And his first cross was really good, wasn't it? He definitely wasn't phased, having played in the Super Classico a bunch of times for both teams, it must be said. And I think gave away a free kick once. He maybe kind of got caught in possession once as well. But otherwise, again, kind of forgettable in a good way, where nobody got the better of him. That one cross was good enough to think, okay, this guy's definitely as advertised, and we'll probably come in here and do a nice wee job for a few months, a year, whatever it might be. But then we get a slew of substitutions for Rangers, where Miovski for Dessers, as well as Curtis, Bajrami, Rothwell and Antman. They make all 5 subs, and this is maybe a wee bit of captain hindsight, okay, so right, fair enough. But it would have been nice to maybe see Kobe Donovan come on for Ralston at that stage, just for a little bit of fresh impetus against this Curtis guy. You've got to think Donovan's a good match for him. The game is on a knife edge, it is a wee bit of captain hindsight, so kind of fine, whatever. But Rangers do make lots of changes, and normally that's not a bad time to kind of strike while players are kind of moving from different sides of the pitch and they're getting themselves sorted. The game did kind of run out of any kind of steam it had throughout the closing embers of it. The last sub that we make eventually as Hatate does come off for Luke McKibben, and again, nothing really happened with it. But we did lose quality quite quickly in the game as it wore on, and we never really looked at scoring, sadly. None of the changes we really made added a dimension to the team or really asked a different problem, a different question to Rangers. Jack Butland is now in this game anyway, is now on the list of a few matches where goalkeepers and defences, we are letting them out of jail big time, because all the players are just too rigidly controlled to be in different zones of the pitch and to never abandon post, and to, not have that agency where on the pitch, if you need to drop into that pocket and get the ball here, Forrest, so you can slide it through to Shin, and you do it. We've seen that in the match. They should be encouraged more and be allowed more to kind of read the game a bit better in that regard and just cheat, After Maeda kind of spooked Tavernier, let him just hang out there. Him and Balikwisha double up on the left-hand side. You tell Negren to tuck all the way in, and you do that for 5 minutes. You really ask him a big question. You really ask him a big problem. But no, there's just none of that. You've got to get back to your zone. McGregor will tell you that you're out of place and you've got to move. And yeah, just super one-dimensional. I can't believe how long I spoke about the actual match. I didn't think there was much to talk about, but I did think there was some points from some of the players that would be good to highlight and talk about with you guys here. Because yeah, I'm not going to really touch on too much else. Transfer wise, we've also got a lot more to go. There'll be tons of content out on the channel specifically to all those topics and developments as they come out, of course. But if we finish the video with the player ratings we've got here, there's not too many pass marks that come out of this. I think Liam Scales really put his head above the parapet again in this one, and honestly, the amount of detractors in the Celtic fan base really needs to fall off a cliff, because Scales continues to, and you know, again, there's maybe one or two heart and mouth moments, but comes out of the game flawless, essentially. I've been on the record already as saying I think this is the best defence we've had, basically, kind of ever. You know, not ever, but you know what I'm saying. And Ralston is, you know, holding his own in that regard. Kieran Tierney, I'm a little bit worried about coming into the international break, because he is like right on the brink right now. I'd love him to actually just retire from international football at this stage, but the defence was really solid. It did not give anything away. The whole back four was really solid, and again, if talking about routes to go, if we're not going to let Tierney off the leash and let him bomb down the left to support Balikwisha, you need to let somebody else, I say, cheat. You know, change the shape a little bit off the ball or on the trigger of something. Let somebody else cross the pitch and come into those areas, because we're just leaving people. We're hanging everyone out to dry. Everyone's got one man around them. We're expecting all of this team to do one job and it work. And the opposition, and every opposition we play against, everyone's got two jobs, if not three, you know. And yeah, I think that really shows. The defence were the most active players in the match by a long stretch. McGregor not too far behind them, of course. As I say, Carter Vickers definitely gets some brownie points back after losing some recently, so GG's to him in that regard. I think Engels is statistically done pretty poor here. I don't think he's quite merited all the criticism and the delusion that he's had in the aftermath of the game. I did think he put himself about well without really contributing too much. He was negative, not positive, with 8 duels lost, only 2-1, 13 possession lost in this game. But I did think he put himself about. He did break things up, and some of his passing forward was the best we had in the team, really, quite frankly. So I think with Arnie Engels and Daisen Maeda, these are both players that cannot carry a team, but they're both players that are part of a very good team, make the machine better, or are a good, you know, cog in the wheel, or a good part of the machine, however that analogy is supposed to go. Hatate is the man that you look to try and fly the flag, and Negren is a guy that you look to really, you know, lead the team up the pitch, and Balikwisha is a guy that Brendan Rodgers described him as a 1v1 winger. We expect to see him take a man on and create some space for himself and you know, put the defence on the back foot. And we never really got that today for some different reasons for all three of those guys, I guess. But McGregor's the one you're looking to set the tempo, set everything in motion, you know. And too often it's Scales and Vickers that's really handing to. And I think that's really the tail of the tape for this one. If we look at the subs, I don't think anyone really statistically done anything worth kind of highlighting and mentioning. Although it is interesting there's no Johnny Quinny in the team. I wonder if he's going to get a loan move or something, because I don't see any reason why he couldn't have been involved in this game somehow, some way. I know Shin came off the bench. He probably wouldn't have came off the bench himself, would he? But interesting. Just with the window winding down and so many moves now getting signed off, and we're seeing players not in squads like Adamida because moves are about to conclude elsewhere. Kasper Dolberg not in the squad for Anderlecht either. And you know, probably the last thing I'll kind of say on this is I did find it very, I don't know if I'd quite call it a bad taste in my mouth, but see when I hear Brendan Rodgers post-game, his comments, you know, you can listen to them for yourself. They're on the Celtic YouTube channel with Celtic TV, the ones I'm referring to specifically. They are so in contrast to the way he's been speaking for so long that I said I was really hopeful we would get him to sign a new contract and he'll be here, and maybe some changes will be enforced under the predications of him signing on. But a lot of you guys have been telling me he'll be gone at the end of the season and all the rest of it, and I don't know. I don't know what to make of the comment. It just feels like such a 180 that he's made with his stance and the way he's talking about the business, the state of the squad, and the question he's been answered, the question has been asked of him, he's answering in a much different way than what he was doing even 24 hours ago or whatever. So yeah, let me know your thoughts and feelings on Brendan Rodgers post-match as well. With it being the international break, we'll have lots of content scheduled up. We'll have a little report card made up for like the beginning of the season so far, the positives, the negatives, new signings. We'll have a transfer window wrap up as well. I've also got another transfer window video that I've been working on, because we've had a transfer window scouting series on the channel for almost half a year, it feels like now. I think we're up to episode like 24, 25 or something like that. As well as a full profile on the Europa League fixtures, you know, the teams we're playing against, the style of play to expect, how Celtic probably go about winning games and getting points, all that kind of good stuff, as well as usual live streams and everything else in between, guys. So if you have enjoyed this video, you're looking forward to that type of content, hit the subscribe button for more, hit the like button if you did enjoy this video, get into the comment section like I've said on screen. And now some other stuff that we've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. Try and enjoy the rest of the weekend. Hopefully we get some signings that put a bit of a smile on our face, and hopefully from here it's the only way is up, really. You know, we're still haven't conceded a goal. The defence is really solid. We just need to get back to scoring goals, don't we? Hail, hail, and moan the hoops.